Hello. Now before I get some angry commenters on this video, I want to pause and say that this is not a takedown piece of the 2010 film Vampires Suck. You are more than fine to continue to love or hate that movie to your heart's content. Also, this is not me hating on the vampyr mythos either, quite the contrary if I'm being honest. This is about the origins of vampires and an interpretation of them hidden in plain sight. You might not have even thought that far until you clicked on this video. So while I know it's not anywhere close to Halloween or spooky season as I'm making this, let's dive into the world of vampires, specifically their origins, a bit of history, and why some people might be attracted to them instead of being frightened. So I will start with the modern, I say in quotations, English vampire, which has a quite unique beginning, a writing contest. Let me set the stage. Imagine you and 3 of your friends are living your life in the early 1800s. A volcano goes off somewhere across the globe. Although it was so far away, what was deemed the year without a summer begins due to all the volcanic ash. With little sunlight and poor air quality, you can't do your normal summer activities, so how do you spend your time? One of your friends says, let's have a competition where we each write a ghost story. So you go to your separate rooms and start writing. Your story has ghosts, intrigue, and it's spooky. When the competition time is over, you present your story titled Ghoster, the spookiest ghost that ever lived. You feel great, and you're pretty sure you've already won. After you share your story, your friend Mary stands up and goes, well, I'm not quite done, but I wrote what I call Frankenstein. Yes, that Frankenstein. A story that would go on to change fiction forever and create the science fiction genre as a whole. And you think, this is crazy. My good friend Maryshelley must have the best story here. And she does, but then your old pal John stands up to present his story and he says, well, I haven't quite finished my story yet either, but I have written this. The absolute mad lad John slides a first draft of Vampyre across the table, thus creating the origins of the modern English vampire. All of this literary greatness from a competition between friends. So obviously, Ghoster isn't real, and if it is, it was not written during this contest. I'm in no relation to any actual story called Ghoster, just to be clear. But imagine being the other 2 people in a contest with 2 of the most massively influential pieces of modern literature ever created. That being said, the person we're here to talk about is John Polidori. The first rumblings of a vampire creature were from Polidori's short story, The Vampyre. Vampyr? Vampyr.
Vampyr. Vampire. Vampyr.
Polidori's vampire tale marked the beginning of the modern fictional vampire mythos. There had been accounts of vampires before this point, don't get me wrong, but many of those writings are considered historical documents making sense of strange phenomena. Fictional vampires were characterized as high class and alluring, although they were also deviant and had a specific appetite that couldn't be quenched. They saw them as rich or some kind of lord, well, the kind of lord that liked to sink their teeth into a main artery like the neck or an erogenous zone. An area where they could feed on human blood, or for people like me that had to look up what an erogenous zone was, a place on the human body that has heightened sensitivity. Places like the neck, wrist, or inner thigh. Since Polidori's The Vampyre, many copycats and adaptations of vampire stories began to spring up, but why vampires? Thankfully, I was able to reach out to someone I follow on social media to ask some questions about the topic. This is Bon. Bon is what I would call a casual expert on cryptids, creatures, and the supernatural in general. They were a wealth of knowledge and a blast to talk to, so if you are interested in the supernatural or want book recommendations, please go give them a follow. Bon helped me to understand the allure and history of paranormal creatures in terms of attraction and interest, and just where they all started to come from. Such as, during the Regency and Victorian eras, people felt very repressed, especially socially. These are considered very conservative areas when it comes to pretty much everything but war. So while vampires were considered to be a higher class, they were also deviant by nature. They broke social rules such as going out at night, going without escort. They often left little space when speaking to people, or room for Jesus in today's terms, and they showed up in private spaces, commonly in someone else's boudoir, which was a major no-no if you weren't aware. The popularity of vampires reached a high point during the Victorian era, a time when people longed for more stories of sultry beings who snuck around behind closed doors and threw social rules of the time out the window, risking it all in the attempt to penetrate their victims in a predatory manner, mainly by sucking their necks. Despite the scandalous nature of vampiric encounters, the second most popular vampire creature this time, Carmilla, goes deeper in regards to attraction to the supernatural. Not only is the vampire character a woman, but this tale shows markedly sapphic characteristics. Thank you again to Bond, they are much better at describing elements of attraction than I am. This is among the first instance of a female vampire seducing and making advances towards another female. Interestingly enough, Carmilla was written 26 years before Dracula was. So before the famous characterization of Dracula, of a male vampire, the formula for sexy vampires was well known and even had some lesbian representation. As someone who personally doesn't have desire or attraction to vampires, seeing these connections and realizing they've been there the whole time was definitely a light bulb moment for me. Some of the earliest imagery and illustrations of vampires involve them in bed with their victim or sneaking in, biting their neck or hiding in the corner of the room waiting to make their move. Circling back to Dracula, one of the most memorable images from the 1931 film adaptation is Dracula with his hand on Mina's neck, preparing to bite her. The connections to a more sensual meaning of vampires are more common than I'd originally thought, and you might even know this watching now. A leading theory is that in times of shared stress and societal pressure, people find outlets and ways to express themselves in ways that might be deemed crazy or improper. This theory could explain the sweeping nature and height of vampire fever, which is my unofficial name for it. With everyone needing to follow rules, even unspoken ones, it's no wonder that the qualities of vampires were appealing. But that was the past, and the Victorian era is long gone. Even the novel Dracula is over 100 years old, so why do people today still have such a love for vampires, fangs, sucking, and supernatural entities in terms of attraction and romance? It's not uncommon for some to have a favorite supernatural entity to call daddy, like Mothman or Nosferatu. Those aren't mine, just as a heads up. But even with the vampiric themes of strange bedfellows, sneaking around, and forbidden touch, there's deeper explanation. To some, vampires represent hidden strength and being able to control monstrous urges, being composed 1 second, but capable of atrocious acts if need be, all while presenting as someone well-spoken and charming. It's the dichotomy, the potential of what could be. For example, just look at the many different tints of gray series and stories of that nature. In our modern era, these stories are no longer limited to literature either. While a lot of people, Bond and myself included, aren't ones that enjoy the sparkling vampires, I do have to mention how Twilight highlights that with each generation of vampires, their character traits and possibilities grow. More recently, we can see a wide range of portrayals, from the monstrous killing machines such as in arkanestudios' Redfall, don't play it, trust me, to goofy iterations such as Nicolas Cage in Renfield, to horror-focused supernatural beings in the upcoming film The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which was a popular chapter in Bram Stoker's book, Dracula. There are plenty of versions of these blood-sucking creatures. You can find romantic and quote classic themes surrounding vampires like lust, attraction, and the promise of eternal life like in the Twilight saga, as well as slice-of-life comedic vampires in What We Do in the Shadows. There's never an absence of content if you're looking for more, as there are probably hundreds of stories I haven't mentioned that are worth reading as well if you want to dig deeper. After researching and speaking with Bond, it is not hard to see why people are attracted to vampires. Whether it's out of curiosity or sensual in nature, in times when people are expected to act a certain way or aren't allowed to express desires freely, there's nothing wrong with using stories and characters to help express yourself. Let people enjoy fanfiction, shipping, vampires, or furries as long as it's not hurting anyone, because people just need an escape, much like they did so many years ago. Thank you very much for watching this long. I hope you've learned a little bit about vampires, and if you knew all of this already, I hope you had a fun time going on this little trip with me. I want to thank Bond the Witch on Twitter once again for being an amazing source of information. I just accidentally stumbled into this topic, as I do with most of my other topics, and I wanted to make a video about it. Please do me a favor and give this video a like. If you have any ideas for things you would like for me to cover, please leave a comment and be sure to subscribe, just in case I cover a topic you're interested in the future. I am blown away with the massive amount of support I've gotten thus far. At the time of writing this script, we're almost to 2,000 subscribers, and I couldn't be more appreciative. With that being said, I've been grdn, and as always, good night, and good luck. Interestingly enough, interestingly enough, oh my God, I got one. Interestingly.